So hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm back after a brief pause from recording. And in that time, I was wondering what should we do next. And I decided that I would like to do something broader when it comes to scope and also something where I could learn a little bit of new stuff. So, as you know, my hobby is, of course, programming, but then I also love video games. So, I decided we could build an application that is a game library, uh, something that has a little bit of features like Steam, but we cannot call it Steam, of course. We'll call it Bream. And it will have this cool 80s-like color palette. And I would like to build something that has real business processes like database authentication, authorization, registration, and so forth and so on, and maybe even user roles. And first thing that we have to do is actually decide on the stack, because we'll build front end and back end. And after some research, I decided that for backend, we will use PostgreSQL and NestJS and Passport to handle authorization. And then for frontend, we'll use React and TypeScript. We'll use TypeScript in frontend and backend. We could use React Query and Next.js. And here's an interesting part. I don't know React Query or Next.js very well, and I'm definitely not a backend specialist. So yeah, this will be our opportunity to dive deep into documentation, Stack Overflow, GitHub issues, or maybe some other tutorials and figure out how to really build what we have in mind. So that's gonna be interesting, I hope. This will be rather long one, but I hope to bring it to its end. Yeah, I'm determined to bring it to its end. First things first, what we have to do is to bootstrap our project. And what you should do is to go to the PostgreSQL page, then go to download, choose your operating system. I will be using Windows. From here, click download the installer and download the installation, the latest version for Windows x86 64. And this is just, standard common installation. After it, what you should see is that there's not only PostgreSQL engine installed on your computer, but also you have an access to something called pgadmin4. And this is a very powerful tool that we will use to manage our database. So one option that you have to connect and manage your database is to use it via the command line, right? But this requires a little bit too much. If you ask me, you should know the SQL engine and you should know the SQL language itself. And we don't really need that, because what we will use is type ORM, right, which I'll explain later. So just to make yourself make your life easier, we'll use this GUI to connect to our database. And if you expand the server, you should find PostgreSQL 13. I have also 11 on my computer. And you can access this database. The default password for the Postgres user should be Postgres, if I remember that correctly. Right? And now you can see the databases, which are, well, empty, besides the Postgres, which is default database. And from here, we will be able to manage what is happening inside of our database. So the step first is to install PostgreSQL on your computer and fire up pgadmin. Okay, with that done, we should really get going with our backend. So we'll be using NestJS, which is, I'm proud to say, a Polish product, Polish framework for building real backend solutions. It's really popular. It's, how can I say it? Easy to learn, hard to master, right? But should be really good for what we have in mind. The documentation is really thorough, and it will guide you step by step through all the things that you may need to build your application, even stuff like WebSockets, microservices, GraphQL, basically you name it. So I was digging around a little bit. Once again, I'm definitely not a specialist, but well, I guess we'll see what we can build. So first thing that you need to do is to install the npm, install the NestJS globally for npm. I have done that already. Right, so it should tell me that it's already installed. And if you have some experience with C# or Angular, you should feel at home, because this NestJS framework is using pretty much the same approach to building modules of your application. Okay, and I can see that the NestJS is actually installed globally on my computer. So let's just go somewhere where I'd like to start my project. Might be here. And we will call it Bream. So looking at the docs, it's just nest new project name. Okay, let's see what we'll get there. Nest new Bream. API, to be precise, because right now we're handling the backend. And I hope it will not crash. Okay, so we have some kind of bootstrapping here. Which package manager would you love to use? npm. That should be fine. Let's see any other questions. Okay, come on. We'll need stuff like type ORM. We'll need our connection to database. Oh, that's it? Okay, well, I was expecting more questions. Let's see. Okay, so what we have here is package.json, printer configuration, git ignore file, configuration for slint, and configuration for TypeScript. So that is looking good. And what we have here, this is our starting point for the application, is basically the Nest factory is going to create of app module. So this is our main module, and it will run on port. First thing that we may change is the port of our application. Let's set it to 8080 because we'll use 3000 to run the front end. And then we have module. And as you can see, this is using some kind of strange operator here. And this is a decorator. And if you're coming from language like Java or C#, you may know about decorators already. This is something new that is yet to come to the ES, but it's available in TypeScript, as you may see. And this is rather hard to explain, really, but you can imagine it as this being a function that is somehow manipulating and changing its arguments, right? With a precise and structured way. For us, we must know that NestJS is actually using these decorators a lot to specify what should happen within given function with given arguments. And here is the definition of a decorator that is building a module. Because all in all, what we're trying to achieve is bring some kind of separation of concerns to our app and put those concerns, not concerns, into separate modules. Meaning, we'll probably have an authorization module that is handling all of the registration, login, and stuff. We will have games modules to search for games, create new games, collections modules, states module, and so on and so forth. So basically, you may think of it as what type of resources and what type of processes do I have in my application, and should those be separate and have separate module. One of that processes is authorization, so separate module. One of these resources is user and another is a game, and this should also have a separate module. Okay, let's see. Then there's a controller and there is a service. So controllers are used to route the request to, route the request to a given service, right? If you, let me check that real quickly. The good old Paint, right? So it looks like this. There's a request. It goes into a given controller and then to a given service. And then it goes back as a response. Okay? it will little paint, right? It will become more clear as we start working on it. But let's start by running our app. So that should be npm start, and let's see what happens. Okay, I can see that the distribution folder is running, and then there is Nest application successfully started. So let's check that. Localhost 8080. No, just that. Okay, hello world. We received that in our application because that is returned. But why? Let's walk through it. We have the controller here, and there's just get hello. Okay, so we have we see few things here. One, that the controllers and modules and services are a class in Nesjs. Okay. The second thing is that we see the extensive use of the decorators. If you'd like your class to be a controller, you must mark it as such. Then I can see that we have get decorator here, meaning this should handle the get request. And when it happens, when the request happens, it should call app service get hello, which is simply returning a string, meaning if I alter that, this should also change or not. And this is because we're not watching for the file changes. So let's run it in the development mode. npm run start dev. Now it should automatically refresh. Okay, and now if I change it, it works. Okay, so how does this work? How the empty request, the one with no route here, right, is mapped to that. You see, from what I remember, you can specify the route, passing it here. So if I change it to, let's leave it at that. Let's create another route in our controller. Let's get hello. Let's do that. Get hello route should return a string. Yeah, and we should return something like hello from route. And this isn't working because, oh yeah, because it should be like this, and I don't know what is this. Oh, okay, missing column. And now if I go to hello route, it should fire up the second function in the controller, right? So this looks pretty easy, and this is how you can specify routes inside of your app. Okay, let's take a look at the service. right? Uh, so this is standard class with few functions, and job of a service or a provider, if you will, because these terms, I believe, are interchangeable when it comes to NestJS, is to get data from somewhere and provide it as a response. And the controller shouldn't really know about where the data is coming from. In our case, it will come from a database, from the Postgres, right? But it may as well come from a file or I don't know, some kind of different service. Maybe this service is making a call to some kind of different API and getting data from there. So the controller shouldn't know how the data is being received by service. Okay, this is a spec, I mean, this is test, definitely. I don't know whether we will work with unit tests. Maybe it's a little bit too much. I know they're important. I do write them, I promise, but this may be a little bit too much. One important thing is that the service is marked as injectable. And this is another tough thing, because NestJS is using dependency injection to resolve the modules. So let's talk about it for a second. I can see that the app controller is using app service, and it receives it as a private read-only property in a constructor, but we don't write it anywhere here, and we don't instantiate the app controller. And it is being resolved under the hood by the dependency injection engine. Meaning, here in a module, I can see that I am building that module with app controller and app service. So these are being injected to the module. And then inside, what is happening is that the engine is building dependency tree, meaning it will try to resolve which module requires which one as a child, let's say, to work. And here I can see that the app controller is using app service. And the engine will inject that service for that controller without me doing any job. So dependency injection is a pattern that you will see often in programming. It's convenient, and I would say it works really well in NestJS, but there's one drawback, because if you don't understand how the dependency injection works, right, it feels a little bit magical, okay, and a little bit out of your control. Therefore, there is, where it is, I believe injection scopes, provider scopes, dynamic modules. You should definitely go through the docs, or maybe even go to a talk called NestJS dependency injection. And try and understand what is happening. and what is the difference between the Express or any other framework and NestJS. Okay, there are always ways to understand it. I'm not so good at it to explain it to you completely. I just know how it works under the hood and how to use it, right? But I believe that should be enough to get you started. So I believe in the next episode we should try and build few routes and connect to the database and see what happens there. So I will see you in the next episode. Bye bye.